First, every voice matters. Secondly, it's also about enhancing decision making. Thirdly, language accessibility. And finally, it's also about customer-centric approach.
Hi and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Karel van Heulen. I'm Product Manager at Televic Conference, and today I'm joined by my colleague Bruno van der Bossen, also Product Manager at Televic Conference. Welcome.
Hello everybody, nice to have you, and I'm glad I can join.
Okay, thanks. So today we're going to talk about multilingual environments or language distribution in multilingual environments. But before we dive in, let's have a more in-depth, do some more housekeeping. So this webinar will take around 30 minutes. If you're not have the possibility to look live at this webinar, we will put the recording on our website after this webinar. For those of you who are looking live to this webinar, please stay alert because you have a chance to win an Amazon gift card. So if you answer all 3 questions right, you make a chance to win an Amazon gift card. If you have any question, please put it in the questions tab that is on the right side. And so I think that's all. We can continue with our webinar. Okay, now the content of this webinar, as I said, is about multilingual environments and language distribution. So we'll talk about the what and why. We talk about what verticals will use it. And we also will talk about the different components. So we have, of course, our Lingua interpreter desk, but then we have different ways of doing language distribution, like on our Plexus devices, like on Unite, like on Lingua Infrared, but also others. As you know, Televic Conference has historically always been in the larger institutions for formal meetings. And currently we're also moving more and more to informal meetings and hybrid meetings. But one thing that stays the same is that we always keep the same mission statement. And that is having creating better understanding. So creating better understanding, this can be taken very literally, making sure that everyone is understanding each other, even if you do not speak or understand the language of the other one in the meeting. So in that sense, the most optimal way to support these kind of multilingual meetings is with simultaneous interpretation, where interpreters are translating in real time, and the conference system is capable of distributing the audio streams to all the interpretation channels towards all the different stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? Well, in fact, first of all, of course, we have the local participants in the meeting who are using our Televic discussion units. So they can connect a headphone to the discussion unit, select the language on the unit, and they will understand each other. And that way, participants can have a discussion in a very optimal way in their own language without any delay. Other stakeholders are also remote participants, because more and more we have, let's say, hybrid meetings where people are in the room but also remotely participating. And also there, of course, you want to have or you want to understand the others in your own language. There we will announce a very nice feature in our Confero Meet suite. So my colleague Bruno will talk about that more later on. Other stakeholders are also, of course, the audience, the observers, who do not participate to the meeting, but need to understand the language or the discussion in their own language. A specific one is the press. Sometimes the press needs to be there and needs to have a local recording, so they use language selectors so that they can select the right language use an XLR connector to connect the recorder so that I have the audio in the local language. Now, the verticals, of course, we do know that language distribution is applicable in different verticals. The first one that comes to mind is, of course, the international institutions, because institutions host typically a lot of delegates and observers, and they have mostly an international character. So this means many languages are spoken and a lot of interpreters are needed. So the translated audio from the interpreters needs to be distributed to all stakeholders in the room or even remote. Another one is, of course, the rental and vertical, where you have events where a lot of languages are spoken. There typically have also an audience who needs to be able to understand the meeting in their own language. Several courtrooms also have multilingual courtrooms. So there you need to understand your language, of course. And in several parliaments, multiple languages are spoken, so also there language distribution is required. Now, the central part that always comes back in multilingual environments is, of course, the Lingua interpreter desk, or the interpreter desk. That is the console that is used by the interpreters to do their job. And we call it the Lingua ID, or Lingua interpreter desk. So if we'll have a look to our scheme, you typically always have a central unit that is connected to the conference units. And then we have the Lingua interpreter desk that is part of the same network. So it's part of the same Plexus network and can be connected to the central unit in just the same way as any delegate unit. So it does not require any special ports, and it benefits from the capabilities of the Plexus architecture, like loop cabling, full redundancy, PoE, and so on. And of course, also important with Plexus, you have also the capability of the distribution of 6 low latency video channels, but more later on. So the Lingua interpreter desk is an award-winning interpreter desk with a user-centered design. It has been built together with interpreters for interpreters, and it has the improved economics compared to the previous one. So you have tactile buttons with braille indications, you have the audible feedback, and it's of course fully ISO compliant. As I already said, the interpreter desk that is multimedia capable can benefit from the Plexus network, so you are capable to watch any of the 6 video streams, low latency, through the HDMI connector on the back of the interpreter desk. Now, there are several possibilities for the language distribution itself. Language distribution to delegates, to the audience. And now I would like to have a closer look to the different possibilities. First of all, of course, the most obvious one is using our Plexus devices. So if we have our Plexus devices connected to the central unit together with our interpreter desks, then it's quite easy to use these also to select your language. So we're talking about Unicos as our multimedia device, our Confero Flex for the audio-only device, or Confero Flash Mount for flash mount devices, but also just channel selectors that can be used by the audience. All of them have the 3.5 millimeter jack sockets. You can have it also in XLR version, for example, for the press, as I said. And they all have a language selector where you can see the channel number and the ISO code of the language and headphone volume adjustment. For Unicos or for the Flex, you have it in the software buttons. For flash mount, you have it with the hardware buttons. Important to know is that for all wired Plexus units, you have up to 64 languages available. Now, if you combine this with wireless units, so wireless units that are in the same network with interpreter desks, then you can also distribute languages. So if you connect an access point to the central unit, you can send the interpretation channels of the Lingua ID towards the wireless units. So it's the same way. It can work with Confero Flex G4. You have a language channel selector, again, as I said. It has two headphone units, so on the left and the right, and it can be used for dual delegates. So if two delegates are using one unit, one can put the headphone on the left side, one can put the headphone on the right side, and they can select individually from each other or independently from each other their own language. For wireless, there is a limitation. You only have up to 8 languages. So if you have a setup with more than 8, it will take the first 8 for the wireless devices. Okay, so that is language distribution on Plexus units. Another way to do language distribution is on Unite. Unite is a digital wireless communication system that allows people to communicate and to interact with each other in a wide range of applications, such as guided tour systems, wireless presentations, but also interpretation and language distribution. And that's what we are talking about here. So if you connect an access point of Unite through Dante with our central unit, you can distribute the languages towards the receivers of Unite. So that's what we see here in our scheme. So important to know is that for one access point, you can transmit up to 4 languages. But you can combine up to a maximum of 8 access points. So you can have up to 32 channels for a wide coverage. It's also tap-proof thanks to the AES-256-bit encryption. You can have even your own encryption key. And it's based on DECT technology, so it's DECT wireless communication, which has an advantage that it's license-free. It does automatic frequency management, and it has a very wide range, so it can go even up to 300 meters. Now, the receiver port is a compact body pack receiver, also with a 3.5 millimeter jack. You can connect your headphone to that. It has an OLED display. It shows you in an easy-to-read way the name of the language. And of course, you see also other things like battery status in the menu. It has an operating time of more than 15 hours. So here you see, for example, a large congress room, the Mahatma Mandir Congress Center in India, with 6,000 square meters and in total of 8 languages. And those 8 languages, well, actually this is 2 times 4 languages. This means 2 access points. And 2 access points of Unite are enough to cover the entire room. So there are just 2 access points hanging on the ceiling and more than 1,000 receivers for the audience. So all languages can come from the conference system and are distributed with 2 access points in an entire room. So here we see, of course, how it's done, as I have shown you earlier. So you have the stage where people are speaking. You have the interpreters doing the translation with a Plexus AR or MME. And this is then transmitted towards 2 access points, and everybody in the room can just connect to any of the 8 languages. Okay, so this brings us to our first question. Please pay attention. This is a question about our Confero Flex G4. And the question is, what is the maximum number of languages on a Confero Flex G4 system? Is it the floor and 3 languages, floor plus 4 languages, floor plus 8 languages, or floor plus 32 languages? The poll is open, or the question tab is open, so please answer in the poll tab and not in the chat. All right, so this brings us to another way of doing language distribution, and this is Lingua infrared. Lingua infrared can also be connected through Dante with our central unit. And it makes it easy for participants to receive up till 40 channels or 40 languages on a pocket receiver, a small and beautiful pocket receiver. So the system consists of a transmitter, a radiator, and then the pocket receivers that can be charged in a charging tray, as you see here. So the receiver as such has a possibility to have 6, 12, or 40 channels. It's fully compliant with the infrared standard. So if you use it in combination with the radiator of another brand, it will work. And it has also the advantage of having a rechargeable battery. So you don't have to proactively change the batteries. So it has a rechargeable battery that can stand for 20 hours in a meeting. Another part is the radiator. So the radiator is, in comparison to other brands, a very lightweight and easy to carry radiator. It has also, or it complies also with the standards, so you can use it in combination with receivers of another brand. And it has a nice feature, which is the automatic delay line compensation, meaning you do not have to compensate for the difference in coax cables, so it does the calculation automatically. And then the other part is, of course, the transmitter. The transmitter is used to connect with the central unit through Dante. It has a built-in web server to do the configuration, like configuration of languages, configuration of volume, and also to start the automatic delay line compensation. So it's very easy, intuitive, no infrared knowledge is required. Okay. As I said, the web server on the transmitter can be used for doing the automatic delay line compensation. So it's a kind of system to make it easy to set up hassle-free the delay line or the delay. So the web server allows you to automatically configure the radiators or all the radiators without the need to change settings on every radiator itself. And as a result, you do not need to use the same cables or the same cable lengths between radiators in order to prevent delay line compensation. Okay, and then of course we have our charging tray. It can be used to store, but also to charge up to 64 receivers. It has also a built-in web server to look at the statistics, the charging status, and so on. And it's a safe and efficient storage case in general. Okay, so I have seen Unite infrared. The question might pop up, what is the difference and when do you use infrared or when do you use the DECT technology of Unite? Well, actually, if we are looking to infrared signal stops at the wall. That means when you have a wall, you can't receive the language from an adjacent room. So it has also the perceived security. If you are in another room, there is no way that you can eavesdrop on that signal. So if you have a setup where there's a multi-room, where you need to step from one room into another, then infrared is a better option, because there you do not need to change the channel. You can just use it, and automatically when you step in the other room, it will pick up the signal from the other room without any issue. So for multi-purpose or multi-room setups, infrared is the best solution. If you look, however, to situations where Unite is better, then we are looking mostly into situations where you have a lot of obstacles in the room. Wherever, for example, there is coverage beyond walls, and there, of course, Unite can cover the entire room without having a line of sight, which is needed with infrared. Unite is also easy to set up. You have just one access point. You can use the power over Ethernet and just use it there. Also, if you use it outside or in sunlight, then the Unite is better because it's better suited for outside use. It has also AES-256 encryption. That means that if you're in the room, then even then you cannot just eavesdrop. And if you have two systems in one room, also there, you can, by giving a separate key to each system, you can have two systems working together in one room, which is not possible with infrared. Now, second question, or it's in fact not a quiz question, but more a poll. It's just a question towards you. What solution do you prefer for language distribution? Is it Unite, Lingua infrared, or do you just use another system? Please let us know. I'll give you 2 seconds. Okay. And this brings us to our next section, and that is Confero Meet.
Thank you, Karel. So indeed, Confero Meet, or all the things that we talked about so far, have been focusing on the in-room participation and language distribution. What if you have remote participants? And this is where Confero Meet comes into play. If we look at the setup that we were showing before, Confero Meet is using all the in-room equipment, but we have added the Plexus gateway as well as the remote participant in the figure. Confero Meet is a cloud-based platform that can be integrated seamlessly into the system completely. Now, before we do a deep dive into Confero Meet or into the language distribution part of it, let's first take a small step backwards and look at the complete Confero Cloud solution. Confero Cloud consists of three main components. Confero Plan, which is basically everything that you need to plan and configure and set up your meeting beforehand. Maintaining or setting up an agenda, deciding which items to vote on, everything that you want to configure, configuring the users, managing the users, etc. The good thing is you can do this at any point in time, just using your browser, and you do not need to be connected to the room. Everything is managed into the cloud and then synchronized automatically into the room. Confero Meet is what you start using once you get into the meeting. As soon as the meeting is started, as a participant, you join the meeting, you can speak, you can vote, etc. Or even as a chairperson, you can join the meeting, manage everything remotely. And then finally, there is Confero Cam, which allows you to set presets for the camera tracking system in the room, setting the presets, who to talk to, focus on who is talking, and integrate this seamlessly into the in-room system, as well as bringing these video channels outside to the outside world and the remote participants. Confero Meet itself, the interface, I'm just showing the interface very briefly so that you have an idea of what to focus on later in the demo. Centrally, you have a video view of all the participants that are part of the call, and with a focus on who is talking. So if you're talking, you're in the image. If you're not talking, you're not shown, to keep the discussion as interactive as possible. And again, so that you have a clear view on the lip sync and the intelligibility that Karel already mentioned, which is very important. At the bottom, you have a button to see, to request to speak. At the left, you have the agenda view, and on the right, you see either a list of participants or, in this case, the voting that is going on and the results of that. Before we start with our demo, I'm going to mention we are going to show two items in this demo. One is the view of a participant. The second is the view of a technician who is configuring the language distribution into the system. So let's get started with that demo. You can see here the portal that is being used in the system. You click to join the meeting, and before you are let into the meeting, the system actually checks if there is audio and video available on your device. If that's okay, you can join. You're entered into the meeting, and in this case, you can see the room view as well with the room camera. At the bottom right, you can see the languages, and this is where the language distribution comes in. So just like with a physical device or a channel selector, you can click on the list of languages and select whichever language that you want to choose. So in this case, I'm choosing French as my preferred language. If we now jump into the technician view, then we can see again the login page, and I log in as the technician. And immediately on the dashboard, I do already have an overview of which languages are activated in the system, and basically a green or red light. So in this case, all the languages are okay. there's no problem reported, and everything is okay. Again, as an operator and technician, you want to be sure that everything works okay. If we move further forward to the interpretation settings of the system, we can edit the different languages. In this case, we had 4 languages configured, and let's say we want to add Dutch, in this case, as I'm speaking Dutch, so I want to have a Dutch interpretation available as well. Apart from that, we'll join with Italian as well. So I can type in the pretty name and then the name that will be shown on the channel selectors, and click on Done to save these settings. We're doing this live into a meeting to show that these languages and this configuration can be done live at any point in time. So whenever you have that exotic language that you want to add to your meeting in a last-minute scenario, you can just do that, and you can see immediately everything is picked up and configured automatically. If we move back into the interface of the end user of the delegate, the remote participants, we see that those languages pop up automatically immediately as well. So whenever you want, you can do that configuration. You do not have to do this up front. You do not have to plan everything. You better plan everything ahead, of course. But if you need to make those last-minute changes at any point in time, you can do that, and you have the overview. So in summary, what is language distribution in Confero Meet? In essence, it's exactly the same as the experience that you have in the room. You have all the interpretation channels available, and you have them available in Confero Meet in the browser immediately for the remote participants. Exactly the same behavior. The interpreter stops talking because somebody else is intervening in your language. You have the fallback to floor, and you have the seamless experience with the best audio quality available. Confero today supports 11 languages, and you have those full 11 languages also available in the remote platform. It does require an additional Confero language distribution license per active participant in a meeting, just like Confero Meet. So why is this language distribution? This was the last part of Confero Meet that was missing to complete our view on a, how can I put it? I'm losing my words. But to create that equal meeting experience, to create that meeting equity and that inclusivity, that even as a remote participant or an in-room participant, you have the exact same capabilities and the exact same experience in the meeting. Also, from an operator or technician perspective, it's important that you can always have a good overview of what is working. You're not only looking at what's in the room, what's physically near you or available, but also the remote part, the cloud connection, etc., of which you have a continuous overview on the dashboard with alerts if something goes wrong, so that you can immediately interact or intervene whenever that's needed. After Confero Meet, of course, there are other platforms or other solutions that you can integrate your language distribution. The languages are available in the platform, and it's perfectly possible to have those integrated in other platforms. The obvious candidates that I'm thinking about are applications or tools like Teams and Zoom, but it could be just as well WebEx, BlueJeans, whatever platform that you may want to use. In the next slides, we'll refer to Teams and Zoom as they are the most widely used platforms and a good reference. Again, we look back at our setup that has been growing in this presentation a lot, and we are adding the Zoom and Teams part, which is a cloud component into the system. And in the in-room configuration, we need to add at least one computer to interact with the cloud part and that integration with the remote platform. We're not going to do a deep dive on the user interface or the platform of Teams and Zoom themselves. I assume, or we assume, that you're more or less familiar with them. And very similarly to Confero Meet, they also offer a language selection button somewhere in the interface at the bottom in the case of Zoom, on the right in the case of Teams, where you can select the interpretation channel that you want to listen to and have that interpretation available, of course. From a technical point of view, it is a little bit more complex to have this set up. Looking at a simplified version of the figure that we were showing, so we have central units connected to which all the devices are connected, both the delegate devices in the room as well as the interpreter desks. And these, we need to connect them to the cloud. For this, we use the PC or server computer that I mentioned, which takes care of the connection of the audio and inserts that into the cloud platform. So in this case, you would set up a Dante audio routing, use a Dante virtual sound card on that PC, and inject the audio channel of the floor into the cloud. Of course, in that case, we only have the floor. We do not have the interpretation channels yet available. And to do this, we need to add a few more PCs, one for every language to be precise. On every PC, a Zoom, or in this case Teams, interpretation client is installed and activated, needs to join that meeting as an interpreter, and then you can, again, with Dante routing, inject that audio into the Teams or Zoom call. That way, your remote participants also have access to those languages and can select the language of their choice in the interface. Of course, this does lead to a little bit of extra hardware and complexity into the system. As you can see, the rack of Zoom or Teams PCs can grow quite fast, quite quickly. And before every meeting, you have some preparation to log in all those clients and have that configuration set up. Other than that, it works perfectly fine. And that also brings us to a third question. So, to be clear, as a delegate, what do you need to install or configure to use the language distribution of Confero Meet? Is that option 1, to download the Televic language distribution software and install it? Option 2, to install the Confero Meet Chrome plugin? Or in the third option, nothing? Please go ahead and try and fill in the correct answer. So, before we end the webinar, another summary of what Confero Meet, Teams, and Zoom. Again, what to use, when, and in what situation, what's the advantage or the disadvantage of the different platforms. One part is the application install and setup. With Confero Meet, everything runs from a standard Chrome browser. So you can just log in into the platform. You do not need to install an application, or you do not need to configure anything on the client side or on the delegate side. On the in the case with Zoom or Teams, it's very similar. You can either run those clients from the cloud in the browser, or you use the native app installation. As for the discussion and the moderation, all the functionality that you have available in the room with Confero Meet also becomes available in the remote platform. So as a chairperson, if you want to mute, unmute different persons, move to the next agenda item, start voting, stop voting, all these features are available in Confero Meet, whereas with Teams or Zoom, you would have to resort to another dedicated or external platform to take care of these options. Similarly, agenda management, the voting, it's all available in Confero Meet, again, providing that seamless experience and creating that meeting equity for both the remote and local participants. Finally, for the language distribution part, the big difference, in my opinion, is the setup and configuration, which in Confero Meet, you do a one-time Dante configuration. In Teams and Zoom, you have that a little bit more hardware that's required, as well as some operations or setting up to do before the meeting can get started. If you have a specific project in mind involving language distribution in some way, physically or remote with hybrid meetings, please do fill it in the form that's appearing on your screen right now, and we will get in touch with you to further follow up and discuss the options together with you. This now brings us to the end of this webinar. We did not talk today about the remote simultaneous interpretation. That will be a subject for one of our future webinars, which you can follow and subscribe to on our website, showing on the link shown on the screen, as well as the past webinars that you can always have a look at again on that website. The webinar of today will appear there in a few moments or in a few hours later today.
Okay. So this brings us to the end of the webinar. I would like to invite you all to follow us on social media. Please follow us on all social media links you can see here. And I just would like to end this webinar by thanking all of you for watching this. And please look at our website to stay in touch with us and to see for next webinars. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
First, every voice matters. Secondly, it's also about enhancing decision making. Thirdly, language accessibility. And finally, it's also about customer-centric approach.